Everyone, and welcome to this webinar on a very important topic which we are going to discuss tonight. And it's very important because this is the perfect season for allergic rhinitis. This is the time where we see most of our patients who visit our OPD with these kind of symptoms like running nose, cough, cold. These are very common because it's been some place there have been rain, some place there have been drought. But when there is change in the weather, we see these kind of pictures a lot in our clinic. So we will discuss managing allergic rhinitis in patients with sleep apnea. Sleep apnea we'll discuss in the next part. First, we'll discuss more about allergic rhinitis, and let's begin this webinar. Thank you. So, first, we'll start with this first section disorders and sleep apnea and what's its effect on quality of life. So, first is what is allergic rhinitis all about? So most of the common allergic symptoms are running nose, sneezing, lacrimation, headache, rash, cough, or edema. These are the common symptoms, signs and symptoms which we see in the patients who visit for running allergic rhinitis. If we have got two or more symptoms of nasal itching, rhinorrhea, nasal congestion or sneezing, then we categorize them in allergic rhinitis. It's nothing but an inflammatory disorder arising against response to allergens caused by Ig mediated response. Most of the patients who present with these symptoms will have elevated Ig levels. If you're doing a CBC test, then you can just measure the absolute eosinophil count, it could be high. So allergens that may worsen symptoms at night time, many patients do come that डॉक्टर साहब दिन में तो ठीक रहते हैं लेकिन रात में मेरी खांसी बढ़ जाती है. So there could be different patterns of allergies. If the allergens are located in your bedside, like it's there in pillows and bedspreads, house dust and mites are there, pet dander is there, certain household products such as cleaning products with strong odors are there, certain medications are there, then we should then we'll have much more risk of allergic rhinitis symptoms in the night time. So what kind of sleep disturbance can come from allergies? Like if you'll have night inflammation, then you won't get a good sleep. Obviously, if you won't get good sleep, then the next day you'll have problem in concentration. You'll feel weak, weakness, lethargic. There's increased risk of sleep apnea. You'll take a short nap, then again you will wake up. If there is sleep apnea, then there is a risk that your oxygen saturation, your pulse rate, your respiratory rate also may fluctuate. You'll have short sleep. There'll be some kind of anxiety, stress, and irritation. So there could also be behavioral issues. And daytime you'll have morning headache, sinus pain, fatigue, trouble waking up. So these could be effects of night disturbance because of the allergens. So it affects the sleep outcomes. More likely to suffer from sleep related dysfunctions including insomnia, nocturnal analysis, restless sleep, sleep disorders, breathing, OSA, obstructive sleep apnea, and snoring. There is higher risk if you won't sleep in the night, then obviously you'll sleep more in the daytime. There will be much more, if you're obese, then you'll have much more risk of snoring. Daytime sleepiness, morning headache is very common if you don't get good sleep in the night. So overall, if we have got the nocturnal symptoms, then it's going to affect your quality of life, your efficiency, your work productivity. Everything will be affected because of those things. So we need to be very much careful. It's not just night symptoms, it's affecting your daily life. If you look at the Indian scenario, this prevalence of sleep disorders, hypersomnia, insomnia, and OSA is quite significant. Like 38.6% of the people suffer from hypersomnia, 59% from insomnia, and OSA, obstructive sleep apnea, is there in 2.4%. This is among all those patients who have been surveyed for severe, intermittent, or persistent allergic rhinitis. So, in allergic rhinitis cases, there is bigger chunk of patients who have got these symptoms. they are often not diagnosed, they are often misdiagnosed, and we need to diagnose them as early as possible so that they can get the treatment, and with treatment all these symptoms gets resolved very quickly. Not only these symptoms gets resolved, but it also has multiple benefits. It affects your weight. If you're obese, then you can lose your weight much more fastly. If you're diabetic, then you can have much better diabetic control. Your blood pressure may get controlled. You feel much more fresh. You'll have less anxiety and depression. So it has got multiple benefits. There is a connection between allergic causing worsening sleep apnea as a particular concern, because we know that obstructive sleep apnea can lead to difficulty in losing weight, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and death. So here's all about how the allergic rhinitis increases the risk of sleep apnea. Allergic rhinitis may cause increased airway resistance because of inflammation in the nasal and pharynx. It causes reduction in the pharyngeal diameter for mouth breathing. There will be higher level of inflammatory mediators, interleukins, tumor necrosis factors. So these all leads to increased snoring and obstructive sleep apnea. So AR and sleep apnea, its effect on quality of life. There is negative effect of nasal congestion was found in quality of life and daytime productivity. There is significant social and economic burden. Your productivity will reduce, so obviously it will put a stress on your economic productivity also. So early detection of allergic rhinitis is very important. Tiredness on waking up in the morning, 83.3%. Daytime somnolence is 54.3%. Snoring higher in males, 45%, and middle-aged. So routine screening about sleep quality and daytime somnolence through a questionnaire is important in ENT allergic clinic in patients presenting with allergic rhinitis symptoms to improve their quality of life. So any patient who has got allergic rhinitis symptoms, we must ask about their sleep pattern, how they are sleeping, are they having a good sleep or not? That's very important. So this is the questions which we need to ask ourselves, that how frequently do we see allergic rhinitis patients with concomitant sleep problems? Do you think allergic rhinitis increases the risk of OSA? Your comments on quality of life, and how important is an early identification of sleep problems in AR patients, and how does it help prevent further complications? So these are some of the common scenarios which we need to evaluate in our daily clinical practice, and accordingly we need to modify our strategy in dealing with these patients. So clinical evaluation. First, clinical analysis should include a comprehensive sleep history. Clinical history is attained from both patient and partners, like snoring, daytime somnolence, freshness and waking up, morning headache, night sweats, palpitations. So these are the common symptoms if you're having allergic rhinitis symptoms in night. You have got a questionnaire, which is Epworth Sleepiness Scale questionnaire. It's a very simple questionnaire which you can use it in daily practice. You can share it with your patients, or you can translate. It's in English. You can translate it to your local regional languages for your comfort. This is the questionnaire. You have to grade it in 0, 1, 2, 3, and 0 is would never dose, 1 is slight chances of dosing, 2 is moderate chances of dosing, and 3 high chances of dosing. When you doze off, while sitting and reading, watching television, sitting inactive at public places, so this will tell you a risk of OSA in the patient. Severity classification based on AHI. This is the apnea hypopnea index is there. AHI classifies OSA based on the severity. A value of 15 or more events per hour, of 5 or more events per hour with existent symptoms or concomitant cardiovascular disorders are essential diagnostic criteria of obstructive sleep apnea. You know, recently because of certain news, because of death of certain biggest celebrity, there is a increasing awareness regarding OSA. Obstructive sleep apnea was not much talked about, but after it has come into the news, many patients are coming that whether or not. Many of physicians and ENT doctors would agree with me that these are we are doing much more sleep studies than before. And we need to obviously to assess the severity, this index should be applied. The AHI is very important index. And diagnosing obstructive sleep apnea, this criteria A, B, and C is there. This is the international classification of sleep disorders. It defines OSA as the presence of symptoms or certain comorbidities associated with more than 5 or more than 15 predominantly obstructive respiratory events per hour in an asymptomatic patients. Presence of one or more of the following: sleepiness, non-restorative sleep, fatigue, waking up with breath holding, habitual snoring, a diagnosis of hypertension, mood disorder, cognitive dysfunction, heart failure, type 2 diabetes. So these comes in the criteria A. There is a criteria B where we use the sleep study. Sleep study is obviously considered the gold standard for diagnosing OSA. It involves collection of 7 or more data channels, which includes EEG, electrooculagram for sleep staging, electromyogram, electrocardiogram, and respiratory channels. It's a home-based thing, and it's not commonly used for research. Sleep specialist assessment and polysomnography important when patients are at risk of central sleep apnea or hyperventilation. Sleep study is a very common test. It doesn't cost much, but it can give a very good diagnosis, early diagnosis of OSA. So these conditions are suggested by the presence of neurological disease, neuromuscular disease, congestive heart failure, severe lung disease, opioid use, or obesity with serum bicarbonate level of more than 27 millimole per liter. This is the sleep study criteria. The polysomnography or home sleep apnea testing shows more than 5 predominant respiratory events per hour. Our polysomnography test showing more than 15 predominant obstructive events per hour with monitoring during home sleep apnea testing. And we need to grade it mild, moderate, and severe. Definitions of terms like AHI is number of apneas and hypopneas per hour of total sleep time. There is another index called as respiratory disturbance index and respiratory event index. Overall, these are very technical terms, but whenever you will do sleep study, which is also called polysomnography, it gives quite a good interpretation, like whether it's a mild, or moderate, or severe. The report which comes will give a very clear picture. So, in general, if there is more than 5 events in a comorbid patients or more than 15 events in a asymptomatic patients, then it's considered very significant. So different types of diagnostic sleep testings are available. There's a home sleep apnea testing, there's polysomnography. These are some of the questions which we need to ask, that regarding the comorbidities in the patients, how important it is to identify symptoms of OSA, because obviously it prevents heart diseases, control of diabetes, control of blood pressure, weight loss. So these are another additional benefits which we get by controlling OSA. This third section, the treatment approach for AR and sleep apnea. This is very important because we are now going to discuss regarding management. Suppose our patient is having allergic rhinitis and sleep apnea. These guidelines for OSA management and clinical rationale of antihistamines, intranasal corticosteroids, and leukotriene receptor antagonist. We'll also discuss some guidelines, important guidelines with it. So the first step, just like any other NCDs, the first is lifestyle modification. Then the next step comes is the CPAP. CPAP we usually given to the patients. There is a auto CPAP mode. We can also suggest um, the pressure levels, but the initially the sleep study will guide you for the CPAP therapies. There are also mouth appliances, mandibular advancement devices, supplement therapy, surgery in severe cases. So this will help in reduce snoring to a large extent. Conventional treatment, the positive air pressure devices, which is CPAP. There is a mandibular advancement application and there is surgical treatment plan. But mostly what we prescribe in our clinical practice are the CPAPs. We also prescribe the nasal sprays, nasal corticosteroids sprays. It helps lots of our patients in reduction of snoring. I have personally given to lots of patients who presents with snoring and allergic rhinitis symptoms. Even after giving this elastin and fluticasone combination medication, we see the snoring these nasal sprays. Even after giving nasal sprays, if the patient has got symptoms, then we can prescribe on CPAP. But obviously, you should definitely get a proper home polysomnography, like home sleep study tests. Manage symptoms through individualized treatment because every patient is different, every patient needs are different. Added humidification to their CPAP device is sufficient to reduce rhinitis symptoms and generate by CPAP airflow and pressure. So behavioral modification, you have this. Quitting alcohol and smoking is something very important. Diet and exercise are important. Weight loss will definitely help because it reduces the fats which is there in the oral cavity and increases the pathway of breathing, reduces the resistance, reduces snoring. So it's very important. So management algorithm, if AHI, the apnea hypopnea index is less than 5, more than 10 respiratory disturbance index plus excessive daytime sickness, then there is treatment is required. If AHI is more than 6, then in all cases you need to uh, prescribe treatment for that. Now we are talking about the guidelines recommendation. One of the first step in managing patients with allergic rhinitis to classify them based on symptoms, duration, and severity. So this is the relationship between range of symptoms and frequency severity. If it's intermittent, less than 4 days per week, or less than 4 per week, it's called intermittent, and persistent for more more than 4 weeks. Mild means patient is having a good sleep, there is no impairment of daily activities, is able to do normal work in school, there is no troublesome symptoms. If we consider moderate to severe, when there is abnormal sleep, impairment of daily activities, impairment of work in school, and troublesome symptoms. So pharmacotherapy treatment, if it's mild, then second generation non-sedating oral and intranasal antihistamines. If it affects the quality of life, then intranasal corticosteroids alone first you need to give. If the symptoms persist, then obviously you need to go for nasal irrigation or decongestants. If it persists, then subcutaneous sublingual immunotherapies. If the patient has got severe persistent symptoms, then intranasal corticosteroids plus intranasal antihistamines plus oral leukotriene receptor antagonist or intranasal thrombin can be given. If symptoms persist, then the final treatment is the subcutaneous or sublingual immunotherapies. So clinical rationales of antihistamines in AR, the because we all know that these antihistamines are indicated, they are used left, right, and center because it helps a lot. The newer one is the belastin, but as we go down the generations, it's less sedating. There is a chance of less sedation. Fexofenadine came in 1996 and 2010 came belastin. This is the second, considered second generation. The new classification of antihistamines in allergic rhinitis based on brain histamine H1 receptor occupancy. Non-brain penetrating AH is fexofenadine and belastin is non-brain penetrating, so it doesn't cause any sedation. Less sedative are cetirizine and levocetirizine, and sedating are diphenhydramine and ketotifen. So among the non-sedative group, fexofenadine and belastin do not show any occupancy in the brain H1 receptors, and thus they are non-brain penetrating antihistamines. So it's very safe to give these drugs. So clinical rationales of intranasal corticosteroids is quite effective and acts by suppressing many stages of allergic inflammation. It's useful in improving ocular symptoms and nasal congestion. Systemic corticosteroids, while effective, pose significant rise of toxicity. If we give steroids for long term, then there is a risk of osteoporosis, there is a risk of hypertension, weight gain, diabetes. So there are lots of risks there if we give systemic. Intranasal, it works locally and works wonderfully. Its approved compound include triamcinolone, budesonide, cyclosinide, mometasone, So there are different classes of steroids which are available in the market. Leukotriene receptor antagonist blocks the activity of secretion of these inflammatory mediators, and they associated with nasal congestion, mucus production, inflammatory cell recruitment. Uh, Leukotriene receptors can inhibit reactive oxygen species, this oxidative radicals. The common one which we use are montelukast. They usually come in the combination of montelukast, fexofenadine, montelukast, levocetirizine. So these are some of the common combinations which we see in our market today. The relative effectiveness of treatment classes used in the management of allergic rhinitis. If we look at the intranasal corticosteroids, it brings down all the symptoms. Intranasal antihistamines, it works all the symptoms. But it works more is the ocular twitching, ocular watering, ocular redness, where the intranasal corticosteroids doesn't act much. Oral antihistamines have got way less effect on that. Leukotriene antagonist has also got not that much effect as intranasal antihistamines and intranasal corticosteroids has got effect. So, general recommendation of ARI in 2017, and the seasonal AR patients, the intranasal corticosteroids are recommended, possibly intranasal corticosteroids plus oral antihistamines to the potential of added benefits. Intranasal corticosteroid recommended rather than combination of internal corticosteroid plus oral antihistamine if it's persistent. If it's severe, then a fixed combination of intranasal corticosteroids, intranasal antihistamines, or intranasal corticosteroids alone. So these are the choices, but obviously the treatment should be individualized. And the key clinical advice is they should routinely prescribe monotherapy with an intranasal corticosteroids rather than a combination of intranasal corticosteroid and oral antihistamines.
सर आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
किसकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है?
प्रत्युष सर, हाँ अभी थोड़ी गैप होगी।
Okay. So the key clinical advice on this is that first you need to grade the patient, whether it's mild, moderate, or severe. Initially, you can start with intranasal corticosteroids. If it's severe, then you can combine intranasal corticosteroids with intranasal antihistamines, or you can just continue with intranasal corticosteroids. These are the key recommendations for clinical practice in the AR management. Nasal saline irrigation is beneficial. Dust mite allergies are very common, so you should prevent getting in contact with them. Better is to use the mask. Intranasal corticosteroid alone should be initial treatment for allergic rhinitis. The evidence rating is A grade, so it's very important. A grade is considered good quality. Compared with first generation antihistamines, second generation antihistamines have a better adverse effect profile and cause less sedation. That's very well understood because they are less brain penetrating. Immunotherapy should be considered only in the moderate to severe persistent allergic rhinitis where you have used all these drugs, leukotriene receptor antagonist, antihistamines, intranasal corticosteroid, intranasal antihistamines, and still the patient has got symptoms. Then comes the role of immunotherapies. So here is the Indian guidelines on allergic rhinitis. This is by the Association of Otolaryngologists of India, and it says the antihistamines, oral or nasal. Next is nasal corticosteroids, and then the trial of addition of antihistamines, leukotriene receptor antagonist to nasal corticosteroids. You need to avoid triggers, saline drenching. So you need to step up therapies. Then, if the patient doesn't get better, then there are immunotherapies available there. Second generation antihistamines like fexofenadine, first line therapy for mild to moderate, intermittent, mild, persistent AR. Intranasal corticosteroids like fluticasone furoate, first line therapy for moderate to severe. Combination therapy is indicated in patients with severe to persistent symptoms of allergic rhinitis. If you are giving oral corticosteroids, if you should be administering a short course like 5 to 7 days. If you are using decongestants, then only use it for 5 to 10 days, not more than that. So now coming to the summary of that, allergic rhinitis may increase the severity of obstructive sleep apnea. If you're suspecting the patient with obstructive sleep apnea and patient is having more than 5 nocturnal significant symptoms or more than 15 symptoms in asymptomatic, then you should definitely consider getting a sleep test done. If sleep test comes out to be positive, if there is moderate to severe, if you grade it in the apnea hypopnea index, then you can prescribe CPAP therapies, mandibular devices, or surgical correction. These three options you have. Treatment of allergic rhinitis is very simple. We have got intranasal corticosteroids, we have got intranasal antihistamines, oral antihistamines are also available, leukotriene receptor antagonist is also available. Based on patient clinical profile, you can use these drugs very judiciously. And behavior and lifestyle changes, which includes alcohol cessation, smoking cessation, weight loss, is very important. And based on patient's response, you can just upgrade the therapies or downgrade the therapies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pratyush, for your very lucid presentation. And